instead of having the camera on me, I'm just going to have it on them, because I think I have finalized and detailed their story arc, which is mixed in with the mythos of the G1 cartoon and original cartoon movie line. So let's go back to Unicron in 2005 when he destroys Cybertron. This is the best place to start is right there at the end of the movie. And in the third season happens in 2006. That's when the Spedabots are found frozen. I wouldn't say in time. They're found frozen in the depths of Cybertron. With them in the Autobots cleanup effort of the destruction of Cybertron. So we're taking it that it takes them a while to really start working on the planet. Sort of have Headmasters 2007 there. I'm not sure. And I sort of made up 3-planet union. Of course, that's between Nebulos, Cybertron, and Earth. And then 2011, I have it highlighted, is the rise of the Quintessons. Now, in the movie, the Quintessons were mysterious. We were unsure about who they were, where they came from. To me, they seemed very connected to Unicron. And I've always considered them as minions of Unicron, because they were also neither Autobot nor Decepticon. And that I took it that they would clean up the mess of Unicron. Now, some canon or someone has made mention that that was not their intent, that they were a separate faction. But I'm saying that they were working under Unicron's orders to help destroy any of those that escape Unicron's wrath. And I sort of made up the idea that this creature is ancient by Quintesson standards, and they reawoke him. And in season 3, the Quintessons were like a joke. They were treated like a joke. The humans were like something new, and they didn't understand humans, and they felt like the humans had pretty much destroyed the Autobots and gave them more emotions, yada yada yada. And so I take it that the Quintessons finally got back into serious mode, and it took them 6 years to get there. And then they awaken Cronus. So those who try to get out of away from the Sharkticons, pit the Sharkticons against them, etc., they're going to sit Cronus on them. Well, when Cronus awakens, stories about him killing whatever in its path, rumors surface. Well, Cup has a realization that he remembers this name. He remembers this character, though he never saw it visually himself. But Cup remembers a time when this creature was alive, and he thought he would never hear of it again. Which brings into about 2 years later, because of Cronus, Autobots and Decepticons finally form a real treaty. But not all of the Decepticons, but most of them. Like I said, not all. This is going to feed into a story arc that I created for a competition on the TF W2005 message boards that for whatever reason, I have no idea why, I was kicked off. I think I remember getting a little bit ticked off of people using bad language. I said maybe a little something, and I mean, this was like 10 years ago, people. And even then, I could still go on. I could still go online. I could still lurk, look, post, whatever. And then one day, I just couldn't. Well, before all that, I created this story arc, and that's coming up here in a second. So 2013, the Decepticon Treaty. I was going to call it something else different, but that's what it is for now. And so the Spedabots are now a part, or have been a part of the group since the end of the Great War, since after the restoration of Cybertron and the Golden Age kind of came back, you could say. Well, then, 2016, the Satylicons are rescued, or found, so to speak. How or why, I haven't exactly said. I just know that these Decepticons were rescued 3 years after the treaty with the Decepticons happened. So, I don't know if they were on a planet or if they were found in the depths of Cybertron yet. I haven't come up with that idea. And then comes about the year 2019, which, yes, this is this year because it's this year, which goes back to the story, which wasn't very well written, I will admit, but I still like the concept because I was a big fan of the jump starters. Top Spin and Twin Twist are sent on somewhat of a secret mission by Rodimus Prime to, oh yeah, before that, Galvatron actually, and a few other Decepticons, very few, like Thundercracker, who really didn't like being a Decepticon if you read his original bio, if I remember correctly, retire. They actually retire, and Galvatron has nothing to do, with the war, with any battles. You know, he was, you know, agreed with the treaty. If things went well for 3 years, he just quit. He had nothing to do with anybody. And I even came up with this 10 years ago in my Twin Twist story. So after Galvatron retired, about 3 years later in 2019, Top Spin and Twin Twist are sent on a mission to find, I can't remember the story exactly, and it's online, it's somewhere in the depths of the message board, the Dark Matrix quest. They were actually supposedly finding the rumored Decepticon Matrix. Well, there is no Decepticon Matrix. What ends up happening in that little story is they go in a section of space, and they kind of go into a black hole as they're hearing a distress signal, but the distress signal is from a ship, an empty ship. And it's an area that Galvatron remembered as Megatron, hiding the supposed rumor of this Decepticon Matrix that doesn't exist. Well, they find the ship. What Galvatron failed to mention was, well, the truth, and that there was no Decepticon Matrix. It was all a trap in a way, even though he was, you know, had nothing to do with anybody. The ship, it's like it was not a Matrix, it was the essence of a dead, vengeful Decepticon who possessed the ship. Twin Twist goes in there, he gets possessed by the entity, and it changes him, and it turns him just immense and huge. He almost destroys Top Spin. Top Spin gets back to Cybertron in the meantime, but not before Twin Twist gets there first. But Twin Twist has changed. The essence has changed him physically. And like I said, in size, he's huge. Well, during this time period, Twin Twist, under like a different moniker or name, nobody knows what's going on. He is just going around killing whatever's in his path. He's, because of his drills, and he's, 5 times bigger than he should be, he's drilling through the planet. He's destroying cities. He's destroying all sorts of stuff. And it's during this time that the Spedabots, he actually destroys parts of other combiner teams so they can no longer combine. At the same time, he also destroys Stridor completely. All of them. That's 2022. So Twin Twist is like running amok in Cybertron for a year before he's finally able to be contained. And I have that story wrapped up in a nice little bow somewhere out in the depths, if it's still there, of the TFW 2005 message boards from 10 years ago. And during that same story, gosh, I have 7 minutes left. I gotta wrap this up. Is where Perceptor and Rodimus get together, and Perceptor is trying to maximizing the minimalistic efficiency of Energon as used in the micro transformers. Because there was a whole line of Transformer toys almost sort of during the end of G1 into the G2 stuff that was mimicking the Micro Machine toys of that era. And I really liked them. They were tiny, they had detail, they could still transform, they had little bases, etc., etc. Well, and so Perceptor is trying to utilize to be able to make, Transformers more efficient and Energon, so thus the future is eventually Beast Wars. Archaic Energon guzzlers, as Beast War Megatron called them as he flew over them. So that's the start of that. 2023. Oh, and that's right. As Twin Twist is not himself destroying Cybertron, he disrupts and destroys the Decepticon treaty single-handedly with this grievance by, yes, the retired Galvatron. So maybe that was his plan all along. I don't know. I haven't made that up yet. You make that up. I don't know. I'm not going by any of the comics or anything. This is just my own made-up timeline. All right? And then I have about 3 years later, in 2026. Oh, wait a minute. No, the Spedabots were destroyed by Twin Twist in about 2022. 2023, rogue Decepticons recruit the Satylicons and begin on refining transwarp technology that began near the end of the Great War, around 84 to 1985, when the space bridges were being created. So they're not having to use space bridges to bridge between planets, so to speak. They're actually trying to utilize transwarp technology. I have that in 2023. Then 3 years later, as the result of the wars between rogue Decepticons and the Quintessons, and still Cronus is still around as well, 3 years later the Spedabots are recreated by Rodimus and Perceptor. Okay, this is where it gets a little interesting. During a transwarp accident that the Spedabots are in, fighting some of those Decepticons, they are thrown back in time. But it's after the Autobots and Decepticons have left Cybertron before episode 1 of the cartoon in 84. What happens to them there, I don't have written down that much, but I do have that they catch up with the female Autobots and Alpha Trion and the whatever rogue Autobots that were left on Cybertron during that era. They have skirmishes with Shockwave and the Sentinels, and eventually they end up getting split up, and it's just the Spedabots in the depths of Cybertron. They're lost. They don't know where they are or where they're going. They get cornered by Shockwave and some of those. The Sentinels looked like combiners. They were huge, but they were not. They didn't break into individual robots. They were just big Sentinels. Like, think the Sentinels from X-Men. That was what these things were, and they were not autonomous. They were just drones. They were huge drones, because in the old cartoon, the bigger the robot, the dumber they were kind of aspect. Metrodicplex didn't speak very well. Devastator spoke like a jock. Omega Supreme was smarter than he acted because of how the Constructicons treated him in the past, etc., etc. Despite Computron's immense intellect, he still spoke like a baby. The bigger they were, the dumber they seemed to be. So that's what these Sentinels were. Well, Shockwave and the Sentinels corner the Spedabots. They haven't formed Stridor, and Shockwave freezes them in time, or nulls them, or whatever, and traps them in the depths of Cybertron until it is the year 2005, and Unicron is ripping apart Cybertron. And their history starts to unfold all again. To die, to be recreated, to be thrown back in time. It's kind of a loop, but it isn't a loop, because they will be created. They'll be thrown back in time to die, and they don't realize that their death is before they were created. So, and there is about a about an 5-year period between when they're destroyed by Twin Twist and then recreated by Rodimus and Perceptor before they're sent back in time by the rogue Decepticons with early transwarp technology. Well, I say early. It's the same technology that will eventually send Megatron, the Predacons, and Maximals into the extreme past to create and start the Beast War saga. So, and that's it. I tried to make it sound as complicated as I could, but as simple as I could. And I thought that was a pretty good job. I just wanted to let y'all know if y'all were interested. So, that was their story. Thanks for watching and listening. And have a happy Easter.